Well, it's well known to economists and policymakers in China and around the world that China needs to rebalance its economy and restructure its growth model. The country's annual two sessions provides a platform where policy initiatives and major tasks for the year are discussed and decided upon. So what are some of the top policy priorities for 2013? We've assembled a panel of China experts to shed some light on where the world's second largest economy should center its attention upon for this year. And my colleague Lily will also be joining us in the discussion. But first of all, we have Mr. Xiang Shongzhuo, chief economist at one of China's leading lenders, the Agricultural Bank of China. We have Mr. Alberto Forchielli, managing partner at Mandarin Capital Partners, a Sino-EU private equity firm focusing on small and medium-sized enterprises. And of course, Mr. Ken Peng, senior China economist at BNP Paribas Group. Many thanks, gentlemen, for your time and joining us on the program tonight. So, gentlemen, first let me show you a set of policy priorities for this year by the Chinese government. Let's put that on the screen for us if we can. Of course, many of these policy priorities are not new, but certainly some of them might be more urgent this year versus, say, the previous year. So we have things spanning from consumer prices, stabilizing home prices, income and wealth gap, urbanization, reforming SOEs, financial market reforms, also a very big topic. If I had to ask you, gentlemen, to choose the top three policy priorities for this year in 2013, what would it be? And explain to our audiences why you chose these top three. And if you choose other, please specify which other ones.
Why don't we start with Mr. Xiang here?
Well, I think on the top there is three most important priorities for China's policy. First of all is to maintain a healthy growth rates as well as development. Yes, central government never focus on the growth rate, but I think without the healthy, without reasonable growth rates, we cannot do anything else. So I think that's the first priority, to how to maintain the growth rate. The second is to upgrade industrial structure and how to reform the SOEs and encourage the private capital investment. And the third top priority is to enhance living standard of ordinary people, particularly for low income level, and of course to improve the social welfare as well as education, healthcare, and many other things. I think that's the top three priorities. Of course, there are many other things that the government must address.
All right, so Mr. Xiang, I've got you down for maintaining stable growth. Yeah. We've also got industrial upgrading as well as improving the living standards of lower income people. Mr. Forchielli, your thoughts, the top three?
No question. SOE reform and industrial restructuring, financial market restructuring, and energy consumption.
Okay.
No doubt.
Mr. Peng, your thoughts?
Well, I think the top priority for me is probably urbanization. Now, it's not really a particular policy. It is actually a collection of reforms, which will include land, hukou, and maybe private sector to provide the jobs. But other than that, I think the energy conservation, which I think the key problem there is that pollution has getting out of control, especially in this capital. And finally, financial reform is on top of my list.
Right. Well, it seems like energy conservation and also how to develop the country in a more green way as of a common concern of Mr. Forchielli and Mr. Poncio. So, gentlemen, what do you think are hindering China's energy conservation? And also, China needs to expand, and as the economy expands, the carbon footprint might get larger. So, is there a way, can we find a balance in between economic growth and also, in the meantime, in a more environmental friendly way, gentlemen?
Me? Well,
anyone?
Yeah, I think first of all, China consumes a lot of energy per unit of GDP. So, from the economic viewpoint, it's not an energy efficient country, and because it never had to. And I think there is ample room now, because also because of pollution, also because of the necessity of lowering the cost structure. Labor is going up, and companies have to become more efficient, and also energy is going up, and companies have to become more energy efficient. In terms of environment, yes, the best way to tackle environment is to increase the efficiency in energy consumption, more than finding more, but more energy. But up until 2030, this country will have to consume more and more coal. There's nothing we can do about it. Just let's be honest about it.
Well, we have to go with the smoke, hovering parts of China in the past month. And Mr. Ken Peng, what is your views on that?
is I do believe that there's a lot of room to improve on productivity and efficiency. But I think, for example, 3/4 of our power is generated through coal. That doesn't have to be, right? We can use more natural gas, more nuclear, which has risks of its own, more other types of alternative fuels. All of these areas are still very underdeveloped in China.
Okay, so you say underdeveloped, and Mr. Forchielli, you say there's a lot of ample room for energy conservation in China. But Mr. Xiang, you also mentioned that China needs to maintain the stable pace of growth. Isn't there an inherent conflict here? How can it maintain stable growth, especially in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities where we need to see massive urbanization?
Well, we must find a balance between growth rates and the energy conservation, energy saving. And these days, many people concerned environmental pollution. I think that's become the top concern of every Chinese people. So how to save energy, how to protect the environment along with the growth of economy, I think will become the very dilemma. And of course, we must make a choice. First of all, some policies and some measures has been already announced and implemented by, for example, Ministry of Industry and Information, for example, to encourage the M&A and to enforce the close down of some the heavy environment pollution enterprises. And of course, we must encourage the clean energy and energy saving industries as well as enterprises. And of course, we must adopt new taxation measures to encourage the individual consumers to save energy, for example, for the users of car and many other vehicles to save energy. And of course, we must to adopt and upgrade the technology in order to save energy and protect the environment. I think how to protect the protection of the environment must become the very top priority for every Chinese people, not only for government, but also for every Chinese people, myself, for example.
So you're talking about industrial upgrading here. We'll get to that in just a second. But from a lender's perspective, Mr. Xiang, are you seeing more bank credit and bank financing going towards more greener projects, at least from the Agricultural Bank of China standpoint?
Yes, of course. The PBC and the regulators has issued so many policy guidelines for commercial bankers and other financial institutions for them to adjust the structure of new lending, to adjust the structure of credit. Then, of course, the bank credit must, flow into innovative enterprises, to a high technology in the innovative, of course, and the capital must flow into to support, for example, the entrepreneur, to support the consumption for low-income people, and to education and other new sectors. So I think this year the monetary policy as well as credit policy will be adjusted in this policy line gradually as well as more fundamentally in order to achieve all these targets.
Okay.
Yeah, so we are now into industrial upgrade, and gentlemen, we've been talking about the two S, starting with the SOEs and the SMEs in China. The SMEs financing is one big problem for them over the years, and now we need to find more channels for them. And also the SOEs, the state-owned enterprises, the reform is pretty a big thing. Most of the state-owned enterprises, they enjoy resources at a very low cost, sometimes even for free. That is one of the reasons that they don't have that much motive of getting into that reform. So, gentlemen, let me hear your thoughts on that.
Well, if I may go. I think with regards to the SOEs, they have the greatest advantage they have is administrative advantage, right? Because in China, in order for businesses to do many things, you require administrative approval. And the SOEs have the human resources, have they have the know-how to get those approvals. So I think one of the keys to reform SOE, because it's very difficult to do one by one, right? So one of the keys to reform SOEs is to reduce the amount of administrative intervention by the government, and then the SMEs will automatically have an easier time at it.
Are you talking about political will here? Because it's very hard for SOEs, I think, to reform from business as usual.
This will have to be something top-down.
Okay. And Mr. Forchielli, so earlier this year, China announced 9 key industrial restructurings, auto, cement, aluminum as well. That's a good start. What more do you want to see this year in terms of the 2 sessions for SOE reform?
Well, SOE have the same problem all over the world. I work for Italian SOEs, the big one. They don't like to pay dividends because they like to keep the money, and at times they keep too much money and they waste it. And second, promotions are not necessarily based on merit, but are more based on political goodwill. So the best people maybe don't get to the top. Okay? So I think there is a lot to be done, because in China there is a lot of overinvestment, and most of that overinvestment is being done by SOEs. So they should start paying big chunk of dividends rather than squandering money. But the problem is, I don't care what is said. I want to see it done, because SOEs make a very powerful lobby everywhere.
Right.
So I'm only going to make a judgment when I see it done. Announcement doesn't count much for me.
So we want to see implementation, actually taking the right steps
let's
forward.
talk after the fact.
sure.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to leave it there. That's all we have time for tonight. Mr. Xiang Shengzhuo, Chief Economist from the Agricultural Bank of China. We've got Mr. Alberto Forchielli, Managing Partner at Mandarin Capital Partners, and Ken Peng from BNP Paribas. Thanks for your insights.